Okay, everybody, we're going to try this again. We have some internet issues in the entire area where where the studio is. So I don't know, John. I'm reading about cyber attacks and everything else. I don't know what's going on, but I don't think the area that I'm in is important enough for something like that. Maybe a trial and error. So, John, here we are, round two, second time around for today. This is live. We'll go till 2 o'clock, and then we're going to switch over to the app and website only for a lot more content. John, great to see you.
Good to see you again.
Hey, we can hear each other. I'm guessing everybody online can hear us. So, when
we got interrupted, we were talking about the Temple Mount. Why do you think there was nobody up at the Temple Mount?
Okay. I think Israel has sent a message that's very clear that we will not put up with it. So it was just from my understanding, just from talking to people, and I talked to a UN Biden sympathizer or supporter. It was just bizarre. That was a whole nother conversation. I talked with Jews who wanted to know Jesus. I talked with Muslims who wanted to know Jesus. There's remarkable things that are happening over there right now. And friends, everybody, listen, we had a tour. In fact, it was a Hope for Our Times tour group that went, and it was absolutely fabulous. The fighting is localized to Gaza and then way up north near the border of Lebanon and Syria. But Israel is just decimating Hamas, just absolutely decimating them. To the point, John, I'm sure you saw this, that Hezbollah sent a message to Iran, and they said, we are not going to escalate the war with Israel. And although we see rockets, they're saying, no, we're not going to do it. And from what I understand is Hamas is getting beat so bad that, listen, these are what do you call them? They're proxies, but they're assets. Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, these are all assets of Iran. And Iran has poured a lot of money and a lot of weapons into them. And Iran doesn't, when Iran does strike, they're going to strike with everything they can. So they're going, no, this isn't going well for Hamas right now. And so I think what it was, John, why it was so quiet on the Temple Mount and during Ramadan is because of that. Israel, the IDF has sent a very clear message. We are not putting up with this, regardless of the pressure from the U.S., the UN, and the European globalists.
So I agree 100% with that, in the Middle East, and I don't know, people that I followed and read for years, guys like Daniel Pipes, Mordecai Kadar, Jonathan Spire, all of them made the point in the Middle East, people tend to follow what they say the strong horse. So they're watching Israel flatten Gaza, and that's sending a message. And I think Israel in part is doing this to send a message to these guys up in the north. And I'm interviewing somebody from Alma Research in the morning. I'll post that tomorrow on our YouTube channel. But they're sending a message to Hezbollah. We will turn southern Lebanon into Gaza. And I think the fear is that what they found in Gaza, which is way beyond what they expected. I mean, they expected 180 miles of tunnels. It's now over 500. It's much more deeply embedded than they thought. And they're sending a message. Listen, we're not going to tolerate this. We're going to finish the job. It's taken longer, I think, than they thought or hoped that it would. But they're sending a message to Hezbollah. I mean, there are other people watching this. They're sending a message to Hamas in the West Bank and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad in the West Bank and Judea and Samaria, and to Hezbollah in Lebanon. We will turn you into Gaza if you mess with us. And that will be respected in the Arab world. I know that's hard for our U.S. politicians to grasp, but I think that's exactly the case. Yeah. So I think that's why you weren't seeing much activity up there on Ramadan. Now we still got 3 weeks to go, and it could still blow up, but they haven't got this far into Ramadan the last few years without something happening. So that's an indicator that maybe what they're doing is working.
Yeah, every place we've stayed, the evacuees, mainly from the north, they're in the hotels. And
Right.
so you're mixing with the local Israelis, mainly from the kibbutzim up north. But what's really interesting, John, is the personal interaction that we were having. In one of the hotels we were in Tel Aviv before the whole tour group came, my wife and a couple other people that we were with met some of the evacuees just in the lobby. And it was just an outstanding conversation. Her husband had been killed. He was a soldier. And they're just talking to her. I mean, she's heartbroken, and she's there with her mom and dad, her evacuees. They're there too, and she's just devastated. Like, this is real. And I really want to make sure I say this too. It really was an outstanding tour, and everything was wide open. We were the only boat on the Sea of Galilee. We were the only group in Capernaum. So for those of you who've been there before, you know that. But Israelis and Jews, for the most part, they want this to be over. They want to get along, and there's an openness between the Jews and the Muslims, to hear about Jesus. It doesn't mean everybody wants to hear about Jesus, but there's an openness that I've never seen before, and they'll admit it's because of the war. And there's an interaction that's going on that's always been. I mean, John, you go to the hotels in Jerusalem, they're in a Jewish area, but you have Muslim workers. Guess what? The same thing was happening there. They're still going to work. The press in the West is painting an entirely different picture. They paint it as if there's missiles that are flying in Jerusalem and all. It's not that way. And the people want it to be over with, but they also know, and this speaks to what you're saying, not only do the Jews want it to be done with, and they're going to move. You really get the sense they're not going to put up with the pressure from the West to quit. They're not going to do that. They're going to get their hostages, even if they're dead or alive. They're going to get them, and they have to. Israeli resilience is different than the rest of the world. And the other thing with the Muslims over there, listen, they understand. Hey, this is not going well. Hamas is bad. They get that Hamas is bad. Look, our jobs come from the good Israeli business. In fact, we talked to a cab driver. Get this, John. We're at Jaffa Gate. We were the first customers he's had. He's Muslim. The first customers he's had since October 7.
Wow.
So you look, you go, these people, I mean, this is how do they live? And it's
Right.
like, no, and it's both sides are saying, hey, we want to get along, but it will eventually lead into a peace plan, as we know, but this is the reality of it. And it wasn't just that one individual, it was person after person like that. No business or anything, but overall, it was a huge blessing for us to be there and a huge blessing for both Muslims and Jews to have us there.
So maybe we ought to talk, and I don't know if there are any questions coming in because I'm not sure where to follow for questions. I'll let you deal with that. I've got some interviews coming up about the North and everything, and I think that's one of the big questions that everybody has is what's going to happen in the North. And I'll be honest with you, Tom, I do not see how they could not do anything in the North. They cannot allow this situation to exist. So Sarit Zahavi, she's been on IDSF briefing with Amir Avivi and everything. And she says, I think the number I was looking at I don't necessarily recommend them for good thinking. Sometimes the INSS, the Israeli, the Institute for National Security Studies, and it's a lot of retired IDF people who were the IDF people who put in place the thing that allowed the things to happen on October 7th when they missed everything. And they just had, by the way, they just had a big security conference. Caroline Glick deals with this on her podcast, JNS, on JNS YouTube channel. You should go watch the recent ones. They're incredibly informing. But the INSS people, they're saying, I'm looking at the statistics on there. They have a database. They have 87,000 people in the north of Israel that are evacuated that you saw in hotels down in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. They can't live like that.
Yeah.
It's not possible.
Yep.
And so what are they going to do? So, by the way, there was a big article in the New York Times this morning, and there were some other reports in other publications talking about the dance that Israel has to do with Russia in Syria. So there were some major attacks in Syria yesterday. There have been a bunch of attacks in southern Lebanon. I mean, they've taken out 300-400 Hezbollah fighters. There's a Lebanese TV station that puts up pictures of all the martyrs from Hezbollah, and it's growing. And they've killed almost as many people now in a non-war, non-declared war, as were killed in the second Lebanon war by Israel in 2006. So there's a lot of activity going on up there. But the New York Times article was, Netanyahu's not doing anything to help Ukraine because he has to keep some kind of relationship with Putin to allow Israel to continue to make the strikes in Syria and Lebanon, particularly in Syria. And Jonathan Spire, my friend Jonathan Spire from Jerusalem Post and Middle East Forum, has some pretty good articles up about this. The Iranians have been very clever what they do. There are Iranian guys get killed, but there's not that many involved, if you know what I mean. They get other people to do their fighting for them. And they do things too, like in Syria and in Lebanon. They set up these social networks, to supply people with welfare and food and other kinds of services, education, and that type of thing. And that way they're like embedded in the society very deeply, and it's hard to eradicate them. So, but I just don't know how Israel does this without going into Lebanon, because they have more tunnels, they say, in southern Lebanon than they did in Gaza, and they're through bedrock, and it's almost an impossible situation.
I remember years ago reading about the tunnels underneath the kibbutzim in northern Israel. So this has been going on for a long, long, long time unchecked. The Gaza, if they had if there's over 500 miles of tunnels in Gaza, as some of those were kept in check, because we remember, each time the rockets would start coming, Israel would go in, they blow up some tunnels. So some things were kept in check, and obviously there's a lot more going on in Gaza than they realize. If they've known this is going on in the northern area, both Lebanon, Syria, and the Israeli side of the Golan Heights, then how much more there must be, how many more miles of tunnels, how much more advanced that they are. And we know the weaponry is much more advanced that Hezbollah has than Hamas has. And like you said, you don't see how these evacuees, how many did you say, 80,000?
The statistics at the INSS website say 87,000.
87,000.
That's from Israel. By the way, in Lebanon, it's over 120,000 have evacuated southern Lebanon. So you're talking 200,000 people in a pretty small area.
Yeah.
That don't live where they did on October 7th. The economic disruption is incredible.
Yeah. It is. And just meeting with, meeting so many of these people, John, it was conversation after conversation was exactly what you said. We just can't keep living like this.
Right.
They've got, most of them are young and have children, or they have their elderly grandparents with them or something like that. You're basically living in a hotel room, not good. So we just got a question from Terry Holm Miller on YouTube, mentioning something about Eric Stakelbeck. Eric Stakelbeck mentioned that Russia is moving toward the Israel border. Can you, either of you, confirm? Yeah, I'd say the last 12 hours for me, because I was flying, but I did wake up to something like that at 3 o'clock this morning. But I don't know, John, I'd like you to comment on this, but I do want to say this at the same time before you comment. We are not at the place of the Ezekiel 38 war yet. And I'm not sure what Eric Stakelbeck said. I'm sure he didn't go to that extent either. I know him well enough to think he wouldn't do that. But
he did say, I did watch his report, and he did say that Russia was moving, but it was sort of non-specific. Russia was making some movements within Syria. So since I've heard that, I'm kind of a skeptic when I hear these things sometimes.
Yeah.
So I've been checking that out. So tomorrow morning I'm recording an interview with a representative of Valma Research in the north, and that's one of my questions that I have. What's going on with Russia? Russia has made some moves in Syria off and on, but they've had the Wagner forces there, but they've never numbered more than 5,000. They've been there since December of 2015. And Russia did have some S-300, S-4. I don't know if they ever deployed S-400. They're better. Well, they have S-400 and S-500 air defense systems. I don't think they were ever deployed in Syria. They don't have an unlimited supply of those. And it's my understanding that all of the S-300 systems were moved to the Ukrainian theater about 2 years ago. Okay. So I don't know that there are any left in Syria. So I think the fact that Israel sort of operates, I mean, you never hear of anybody getting shot down, an Israeli jet getting shot down or anything like that, which leads me to believe that Russian assets have been moved up to Ukraine. Now, Russia wants to maintain its influence in Syria, but its main concerns in Syria was having the air base up north and the port at Latakia or Tartus, maybe both. In the north of Syria, to have a warm water port. So those aren't really threatened by anything that Israel's doing, and Israel's not going to do attack those assets. So I'm a little bit skeptical of the report. I'm checking it out. That's all I can say.
You know, in fact, I found this article with Eric Stakelbeck. It was yesterday in Harbingers, and basically he doesn't take it to two. He says, you know, why is Russia doing this? He's reading reports too. I would say he's going along the lines of what you are saying, just what I can read while I'm sitting here. Does talk about the issue with drones, but he says this could be that Iranian and Assad regimes are essentially calling it backup. I'm not saying Russia is going to militarily get engaged against Israel in this particular situation. However, are they trying to send a message to Israel and act as a deterrent? Then he quotes a couple of peace purposes that they might be up there. Hey, just, you know, let's just chill out on the whole thing. So interesting. I want to caution people, though, along this lines also, John, just because, and I'll get to that question, by the way, in just a second. I want to caution people on just reading too much into reports of, we see Russia, they're going to invade, and Ezekiel 38 is going to happen, or this, and, just be careful on taking things, reading more into something that's actually there. And listen, me being in Israel, John, we went freely into parts of Judea and Samaria. Right. When you read, just the other day, 2 weeks ago, before the tour group, we were with Roddy down. We went to Bethel or Bethel, Jacob's Ladder. We were down at Morsha. So we go to these areas, and it was really phenomenal to be there. But man, again, if you read the Western media and even in prophecy news, you would get a whole different idea of what's going on. And I would just caution everybody, listen, the Ezekiel 38 battle is not going to be tomorrow, and it can't be, because certain things aren't in place yet when you look at what Ezekiel 38 does actually say, with certain details that have not yet come about. I'm not saying things couldn't, a bigger war couldn't break out tomorrow, like you said, with area up north. I'm not saying that, but I just want to be careful what we hear about in the Western media, even in some prophecy news.
Well, what happens to me is, Israel will attack things in the suburbs around Damascus, which they did yesterday. There were several attacks, and they destroyed some warehouses and that type of thing. And I'm sure you get the same thing immediately. I'm getting emails. Oh, this is Isaiah 17.
Yeah,
happening. And I'm like, look, when Isaiah 17 happens, we won't. We'll all be going live to talk about it. It's not going to be a few attacks here and there. And I don't know that we're at that point yet. And I don't know how capable Russia is right now to engage in anything in Syria, because I mean, they're winning in Ukraine, and they're going to win that. I think. I just don't see how Ukraine can continue. I mean, they're losing all their men, Tom. I mean, their demographic, the bell curves for their demographics are like Ukraine will never recover. And I've evangelical pastor friends in Ukraine are saying it's bad, and I think it was an article. It must have been maybe New York Times or Washington Post this morning saying, well, there's like 10 million people missing from Ukraine. Well, they've all left. That's, it's just like there's 10 million people missing from Syria because they all left, starting after the civil war started. So there's tremendous disruption there. I think the one thing to watch more importantly in that regard, with regard to Gog, Magog, Meshach, Tubal, all that stuff is Turkey. Because, Turkey is now down meeting with Egypt, having meetings with Egypt, which is a big deal because Turkey went through about a 15-year process of switching from a secular to a Muslim Brotherhood society under Erdogan. He was very clever the way he did that, and he did it well enough that I think what the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood thought was, well, we can take what took him 15 years and compress it into 2 months in the Arab Spring. And they did take over Egypt for a while, but then El-Sisi came back and he's pretty much put a clamp down on that. But Egypt's having a lot of problems because of the reduced traffic through the Suez Canal, because of the Houthi attacks on shipping. That's a major part of their government budget. It's around $10 billion that they get for transit fees in the Suez Canal. And that's cut by at least 40%. So Egypt's looking for help, and they're looking to the Muslim Brotherhood run Turkey, which has become totally, they were having meetings set up for Israel and Turkey to meet, and now they're at odds. And Erdogan is constantly, and he just came out the other day and said, we support Hamas 100%. So that's a big issue, and they're a big player in this Ezekiel 38-39 thing. And I will just say one more thing, and I know we've been talking about doing another sort of technology roundtable, you, Scott, Britt, and I. And there's a big article that was in the Wall Street Journal Saturday or Sunday or over the weekend about the development of drone technology. And this is a big game changer. And so I was reading some Hezbollah people tweeting today about, oh, look at how, they're shooting all our stuff down. They're shooting down our $1,000 drones with $70,000 missiles. So we're winning because we're running them out of money. And it's true. I mean, there's a cost benefit thing. And with the other developments in AI that are coming, I will tell you, I've been talking to some people in the industry. I would say sources on deep background that are saying, listen, people are talking about ChatGPT and deep fakes and all this stuff. Believe me, this thing has gone way beyond what you're seeing in the public. Yeah. Way beyond.
Well, I'm looking forward to getting into that roundtable with you. I get to ask the questions again, right? So good.
Right.
So cool. Hey, so I'm going to answer this next question real quick, and then we have a question about Iran I want to get to. B. Rich says, when God gives them over to a reprobate or debased mind, Romans chapter 1, does that mean they are abandoned to judgment like Pharaoh when God hardened his heart? Yes, that's exactly what it means. They've crossed the Rubicon. And I'm afraid when I look at America, we're in trouble. But if we get to the next question, thank you, B. I want to do that one quickly. So Harris Meek on the website asks, how close is Iran to having nuclear weapons? And John, I'm going to say this. I remember in 2006, I read a report that Iran was only 3 months away. So here we are, 18 years later, and we hear reports. But let's be a little bit more real about it, because obviously things have escalated a lot. Iran's moving that direction. Israel has been known to somehow, remember Stuxnet, that cyber worm thing that took out their nuclear program or whatever it was?
Right,
Israel's,
the industrial, the software thing.
yeah, Israel's been
Virus.
known to be able to put throw a wrench in a monkey wrench in the plans of Iran with their nuclear technology. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, my concern though is Iran learned from that virus thing, and we're going to see. I mean, I just saw an interview with Whitney Webb, who I don't agree with some things on. I think somebody needs to sort of instruct her about the Israel thing, but aside from that, she has good information, and she's just saying there's massive cyber attacks when it comes. I mean, look, I do take some medication, I'm an old man, and I went to one medication I've been getting for free. I had a coupon from the drug company. They had a cyber attack on all the pharmacies. I mean, this is all over the country, pharmacies, hospital pharmacies, and everything. And my pharmacy said, we don't even know if we're going to get reimbursed by the insurance companies because they destroyed everything. And everything, anybody who had a coupon from a drug manufacturer, it's gone.
Wow.
You have to go redo it. And so I've spent maybe 10 hours on the phone with my subscription provider under Medicare and all this. I mean, it's frustrating. And I had to go to the pharmacy. I had to give them all my drug cards again. I had to go through the Medicare, drug instruction and sign paperwork. And I said, I've been doing this. I've been here for like 5 years. What's going on? She goes, well, we just can't find it because it's gone. So it's cyber tech. So understand the cyber tech thing is going to be a big, big deal going forward. I mean, the World Economic Forum had this thing about the cyber. They said the cyber attack was going to exceed the Charlie Vector problem. So maybe we ought to believe what they're saying. So there's a lot of things going on that side. So I don't think listen, whatever Iran's got, I think they could break out fairly quickly into a nuclear weapon. But I don't think they're going to do that because it's going to bring a lot of grief to within their borders. Because Israel's just not going to be able to tolerate it. But I don't know how effective Israel can be in the attack, Tom.
Yeah.
I mean, they would have to have a base up in Azerbaijan to help. They have extended fuel tanks on the F-35s, but they need refuelers, but they're not getting any refuelers till 2026 or 2027 from the United States that manufactures them. And certainly the regime in charge right now is not going to help them.
No.
So
yeah, when my last conversation with you, John, was actually one of the last videos I did before I went to Israel, was the Biden administration is basically saying, we're not interested in continuing to help Israel and give them the weapons they need and the ammunition they need. We're going to have to renegotiate. So I don't know what's happened since then, but that's kind of how things were when I left.
They're more and more talking about slow walking everything. And the political situation here is out of control because another Republican congressman resigned in the last week. That gives the Republicans a 1-vote majority. And there are reports that 3 more may resign. 3 more resign. The Democrats are in control of both houses of Congress.
Wow. With Biden.
This is insanity that's going on. It's like, I've said this before. I want it to be a pre-trib rapture. Before the pre.
Well, here's just some of the articles from today that are on our website. Trudeau administration to stop arms shipments to Israel. No shock there, right? Obama appointed judge rules illegal immigrants can carry guns in the U.S. Gee, they can, but we can't. I mean, those are just a couple of things. By the way, I want to say this. We're going to switch to the app and website only here in just a second, everybody. So I'll get a countdown on when that's going to happen. So if you're on YouTube, you might as well make the trip over to the app or the website right now, hopeforourtimes.com, because YouTube's going to be shut off here in just a second. But John, when we were in Israel, it's very interesting. Pretty much the only tour groups we saw, there were solidarity groups, kind of like I went and did that in January. And it was groups from Asia. There are some small tour groups from Asia that we saw in hotels, and that was it. very interesting, the Asian influence in Israel right now.
Yeah, they're like 4 feet tall.
So, well, you're like, I can't believe you just said that.
No, I'm sure they are. I mean, when we were the first time we went to Israel, we had a bunch of Asian groups in our hotel, Japanese, and these little ladies, like I was holding the door open and they're running under my arms and everything like that to get in ahead of everybody else in the elevator. They tried to get us on we're going over to Ben Yehuda Street, and the bus for the hotel pulled up and the door opened, and here came about 20 of these little Asian gals running. And, our group was getting on the thing. So I just held out my arms and like caught them and stopped them,
So John's like 6'10", he's big guy. I'm like closer to 4 feet. He's closer to 7 feet. So that's funny. So I don't know, how much longer do we have before it's going off YouTube? 1 minute. So 60 seconds, everybody. That's going off YouTube.
Okay.
So I look at these things. Okay, let me ask you this. Obama appointed judge rules illegal immigrants can carry guns in the U.S. So I think I read that right when I was getting on the plane to come home the other day, yesterday, or whenever it was. By the way, literally, we got in late yesterday, and my head is spinning, just so you know, everybody. So that's where I'm at. But illegal immigrants can carry guns. I mean, you start looking at, how can we ignore these facts anymore when we see what is actually happening with the southern border and people coming over here? It is a planned destruction of America. They're buying votes, and they're taking everything in this direction.
It's insane. And then we can talk on the app only thing about the recent Supreme Court hearing on the First Amendment issues. That's very troubling. And then the other question too is, why was Obama at number 10 Downing Street yesterday? What's up with that?
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, he was. He was meeting with Sunak, the Prime Minister of England, Great Britain, UK.
So I'd like to hear what your thoughts are on why Obama was doing this, because I think most people realize Biden, it's not the Biden presidency, it's the old Biden presidency and these globalists.
Right.
Okay, everybody on YouTube, head on over to the website, hopeforourtimes.com, or the app by the same name. If you haven't downloaded, it's free to download. You can do that right now. But that's where we're going, and now I get to ask John to talk about anything he wants. And I'm going to ask you about January 6th. So bye, everybody on YouTube. See you on the app. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, why was Obama, why do you think